Hello, this is Tatu welcoming you to another Asian Agribiz podcast. Today is Q Tan, editor of Asian Pork Magazine, talks to Dr. Glenn Ferriol, area manager, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines at Hamlet Protein to discuss anti-nutritional factors, particularly in soy proteins, the harm they cause to young animals, and strategies to minimize or remove them in young animal diet.
Hello, Dr. Ferriol. Thank you for joining me in this podcast.
Thank you, Isa, for inviting me.
We hear a lot about anti-nutritional factors, which is common in many feed raw materials. And they are harmful most to young animals. And I'd like to discuss this further with you. Can you elaborate a little bit on what anti-nutritional factors are and how and why are they harmful to young animals?
Okay. In general, anti-nutritional factors are substances that, when present in animal feed or water, they either by themselves or through their metabolic products reduce the availability of one or more nutrients to be absorbed. So these ANF or anti-nutritional factors are really common to most of the raw materials that we use in our feed production. But I'll be discussing a bit more of the anti-nutritional factors in the soybean meal because, well, this is the most commonly used option in our feed production.
Okay.
Okay. So the anti-nutritional factor in soy protein can be the main issue or the risk in young animal health. So it could cross into the health side, and that is why we really work very hard to minimize these anti-nutritional factors, as it can be critical to growth and development of piglets, chicks, or cubs, basically young animals.
Okay.
So soybean meal, it contains all essential amino acids necessary to animal growth and development. Yet, when standard soybean meal is used in, let's say, starter feed, these young animals have hard time digesting and absorbing many of the vital nutrients of the soy. And also, soy contains natural content of anti-nutritional factors. So that is one of the reasons why they are not able to digest or absorb it, especially the young animals. In soybean meal, you can divide this anti-nutritional factor mainly into three main groups. Number one is the trypsin inhibitors. And then number two would be the sugars or the oligosaccharides. And then number three is the antigens or the beta-conglacinin.
Okay.
So let me dive further. The most commonly one that probably you would hear a lot is trypsin inhibitors. These are protein form complex bindings to the digestive enzyme trypsin and chymotrypsin that inhibits their ability to break down the soy protein in the starter feed. As the young animal gut secrete enzyme at a low concentration to counter trypsin inhibitor activity, this provides a potential pathogen with an abundant supply of non-digested protein to ferment. And this extra protein is basically fermented, and in the fermentation process, toxins are produced, that damages the gut lining, and that may permeate the gut, activating the immune system, and overall can have an impact on the, let's say, gut health of the animal. Second group are the sugars. Sugars, well, in older animals, maybe these are beneficial, but at a very young age, we try to minimize this in young animal diet, for example. So we are referring to these sugars as the oligosaccharides. The most important ones are the stachyose and raffinose. For the main reason that the young animals, they have an immature gut in the absence of galactosidase enzyme, means there is no capacity to break these carbohydrates down. So that means you have an excess sugar that pass through the large intestines, where again, they will be fermented by bacteria, causing abdominal discomfort, flatulence, or even with droppings or with feces. Now, as a veterinarian, my favorite component or favorite type of ANF is the antigens, or in this group is the beta-conglacinin. That's what they call. So maybe this is something new or something that you don't hear very often because not many laboratories are able to identify the level of this in the soybean meal or in the raw material.
Okay.
So beta-conglycinin is a soy antigen that poses the biggest challenge in young animal feed. So along with glycinin, it comprises the greatest part of the protein in the raw soybeans. In young animal, the common outcome is an allergic reaction, so leading to oxidative stress and inflammation. So the potential health problems may include villi atrophy or increased gut permeability, which inhibit the growth of intestinal cells and destroy cell structure.
Okay.
Apoptosis or controlled cell death and villi atrophy can result and reduces the gut capacity of nutrient absorption. So it's double whammy for young animal. Remember, in young animal, we wanted them to have a healthy, much better growth or increase of the villi, for example. But with a exposure to beta-conglycinin, you have this problem of villi atrophy or gut permeability. So it can be observed in those animals, and by having that, it allows toxins and other molecules to cross the gut membrane, and it causes allergic reaction to the animal. Of course, the most common sign that you will see also is scarring, or in broilers, this could be a wet litter. No, nearly 90% of neurotransmitter like serotonin is stored alongside the epithelial cells that lines the gut. So these regulate peristaltic movements wherever feed is transported through the gut. So when the allergic reaction occurs and the epithelial cells are damaged, thereby releasing the neurotransmitter serotonin, it increases the strength and the rate of peristalsis movement. So basically, feed passage can happen. So this is one of the direct impact of a continuous exposure to, let's say, beta-conglycinin. You will also have a sign of oxidative stress that is linked with inflammation. So specific proteins in the animal cells regulate immune response to infection, which when activated by beta-conglycinin, again, the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines goes up, activating the, let's say, neutrophils and the white blood cells, and then promotes oxidative stress. Then this triggers various cycle of inflammation that becomes chronic, again, if beta-conglycinin remain in the diet. So that means if continuously you supply level of antigen, level of anti-nutritional factor, this will lead into this health issue. I'm sorry, I'm very passionate in discussing this because this is the most common clinical signs that are also misdiagnosed, or maybe sometimes as veterinarian, we fail to observe in the production system.
Okay, so it's fairly common to see, like you said, it's fairly common to misdiagnose because the signs are similar to perhaps other diseases or other clinical signs of other diseases.
Correct. And let's say we in the animal health side, normally we don't think about this because we normally assume that the feed or the ingredients that are given to these young animals are, of course, clean or free of this contamination.
What are the current strategies used to address or remove ANF in feed for young animals? And how effective are these strategies?
Okay, the best strategy is basically to avoid exposure of young animals to ANF, right?
Yes.
So how? By providing those protein with the lowest level of ANF. Which companies or which products they actually guarantee on their label that they have this level of ANF in the product. So I relate it to mycotoxin risk management. In managing toxins, for example, of course you always start with how much, which toxins are there. No, if we don't know what are the contaminants, if we don't know what is the level of contamination, then it's very difficult to manage it.
Yes.
And unfortunately, this is the issue that we are facing in the anti-nutritional factor component of our raw materials, specifically in this case in soybean meal, because anti-nutritional factor testing is not yet a routine test in the feed mill level. There are a few laboratories that are able to or have the capability, let's say, to test beta-conglycine. I know trypsin inhibitor activity or oligosaccharides are now becoming common, but still not part of the routine test. So I think one of the reasons for this is, of course, cost and time, no? Actually, there are several published work on different soybean meal sources that says that, for example, trypsin inhibition activity can vary as low as 1.4 milligram per gram or ppm to as high as 5.5 milligram per gram. In our own experience, we can even receive a sample that tested, let's say, around 8 or 7% trypsin inhibition activity. And then when you look in the total oligosaccharides or the sugar component also, it can range to as low as 4.55 to as high as, let's say, 2.12. So looking at this variation, you can already see that, let's say, if you are using soybean meal, let's say, at 25% inclusion in your young animal diet, you can easily generalize that you are giving those young piglets, young birds, a certain high dose of anti-nutritional factor directly. But generally, what I will always recommend for our customers is that look on the level of total soybean meal usage, especially in the young animal diet. So in piglets, it's very easy already because most of the animal nutritionists or those specialty on piglet nutrition, they know that they cannot use a high level of soybean meal into this young piglet diet because it will always show a diarrhea issue, or they can already see the challenge. In poultry, on the other hand, it's in broiler specifically, it's more challenging because there are no published limits in this one. So the strategy is to probably lower it down at certain level so that you are at the threshold or a lower threshold of anti-nutritional contamination. Or, of course, you have to use a protein source that is known to have the lowest anti-nutritional factor there is.
Okay, so there are sources that are low in ANFs. Can you discuss this a bit further?
So that would lead into the different manufacturing process or different products, if you may. Soy protein concentrates, for example. So this would be the determining factor is basically on the method, on the way they manufacture a protein or specialty protein products. I think my message there is that it's actually easy to eliminate or remove anti-nutritional factor in the soy. What is not easy is removing it without damaging the amino acids in the soy.
How do you ensure that the amino acids don't get damaged?
That's a good question. That would lead into when you want to discuss the different type of soy-derived products. So it depends which particular source you have.
So why are soy protein concentrates a good option?
Soy protein concentrate, from the term itself, usually it contains minimum 65% CP. So the crude protein of this soya or soy-derived product is a little bit higher at 65% CP. Remember that within the soy protein concentrate group, there are so many different product variation or different manufacturing process. There are manufacturing process that uses alcohol and solvent extraction with heat, or there are manufacturing process that use double heat extraction or double heat application. So that's why they usually ended up with a higher CP component.
Okay.
The stock use or the sugar level is also low, around 1.2 to as high as 4. But the beta-conglycine can be as low as 1, but also can be as high as 4,300 ppm. So relatively, they really reduce the anti-nutritional factors as well. They are very good if you compare it at least to soybean meal or full-fat soy. I would consider this as an alternative also. Another type of soy-derived product is maybe common in Asia, I mentioned to you, is fermented soybean meal. So, but this is usually produced by mixing standard soybean meal with moisture, water, and a bacterial culture. And then fermentation takes place in the files or in the floor or in the beans. Unlike other form of soy protein production where fermentation is produced in an individual batches instead of continuous process. So the challenge with fermented soybean meal is that batch to batch variation is very wide, and also at least one ANF is very hard to control. In fermented soy, the crude protein level is a bit lower, around 52.4 to as high as 56.2. The trypsin inhibition is slightly higher than let's say soy protein concentrate, 0.1 to around 4%. But they are very effective in reducing sugars or the oligosaccharides. So in this case, for example, stachyose in fermented soybean can be 0 to as high as maximum of 2.0. So really, they are good in reducing sugars. But the beta-conglycinin, the antigen component, remains a bit on the high side at around 3,600 to, let's say, as high as 112,069.
Okay.
So another group that worth mentioning is basically the enzymatically treated soybean meal. So the method is based on a continuous flow processing where soy, moisture, and enzymes, so mix of enzymes are used and co-processed. The temperature used during the drying process deactivates the enzyme, so you cannot find the enzyme anymore in the product. But this method is very effective in reducing the anti-nutritional factor by biotechnological process, which also significantly increases the digestibility of the protein.
Okay.
So the use of enzyme means that the enzymatically treated soybean meal product have a very low oligosaccharide contents or low sugar compared to SPCs. And protein concentration is moderate at around 55.5 to 56%. So a little bit lower CP. But the good thing is that the enzymatically treated soybeans are consistently have low content of beta-conglycinin and low trypsin inhibitor activity. So this is the good side on enzymatically treated soybean meal. They have one of the lowest beta-conglycinin component in this type of soy-derived products. So I hope I answered your question that how they produce, what are their advantages.
Okay. And so because of that, they have more advantage for the young animal. So they are better used in young animal nutrition.
Yes.
Okay.
They are actually more intended to be used in young animals. So the reason why we try very hard to remove the anti-nutritional factor is that you are able to maximize the application of soybean to young animal.
So what would be the cost to use such product? Because cost is always a factor in production, especially now. How cost effective are these different products?
Correct. That's a very important question. Of course, cost is always important. No? Soy-derived products or further processed soy are generally more expensive. No? But are they cost-effective? At least for, let's say, enzymatically treated soybean meal, I would say that this is more cost-effective because its ability to be able to replace more expensive proteins, such as animal proteins or fish meal or plasma. So in general, cost effectiveness will be what we call subjective, depending on where you wanted to compare it. No, but cost effectiveness is actually a part of a combination strategy in the feed efficiency and in farm management, which of course increasingly becoming more important for our farmers. So for example, in Hamlet Protein, we believe that to drive this performance, we need to start early in life of the production process. We strongly believe that investing in starter or pre-starter feeds will have a good payback throughout the production process. This is where the return is. This is where the cost effectiveness will come in. Why? Healthy young animals would mean less disease challenge, better nutrient utilization, better conversion or growth, or if they become infected, they have much better chance of recovery. So it's more important than ever to provide a clean, good source of highly digestible protein in the young animal as possible. I'm speaking here of, let's say, day 1 to day 7 or 14 to broilers, so really young age. And then for piglets will be probably around day 1 to day 75, if you may. So very small part of the whole production process. So we have successfully replaced fish meal and blood plasma in our diet formulation at a lower cost while matching their performance. So in that sense, Isa, I would say that it is cost effective.
Yeah, let me put it this way. The point is really to ensure that your younger animals are healthier, and therefore, as they go through life, they will be better able to address many challenges that come their way.
Correct. You have to responsibly use this specialty soy product or specialty protein source and replace those that are more expensive in your formulation. What I mean is that if the reason why you have to use animal proteins, for example, is because you are limited by using soybean meal at a high level in young animal diet. So, but if you have ways to effectively remove it, then that means you can take advantage of the amino acid profile of soybean meal. So that means in piglets, for example, rather than using it at around 6 or 8% only, with a good source of soy-derived alternative, you can actually use even as high as 13%. In Denmark, for example, they're using it as high as 18% in young animal diet. Because they are able to effectively remove the anti-nutritional factor, then you can take advantage of the amino acid profile. So cost efficiency will come when you select and be smart on which you are going to replace in your formulation, for example.
Okay. But are you seeing more use of these products in Asia?
Yes, we're seeing more and more use of soy-derived specialty product in Asia. In fact, not only limited to soy, but also, if you notice, there are more and more production of, let's say, insect protein, or those proteins that derive from insect. So it's becoming common, and also you will see more production are localized. There are many companies invested in localized production, say in Vietnam or even in Thailand. But in case of Hamlet Protein, we have noticed the continuous increase in demand of our product because of the need for a high quality alternative for fish meal and plasma proteins in the market. I think this also due to the continuous damage of the African swine fever that is damaging through Asia, for example. Animal nutritionists and managers are now becoming more aware, and they are considering using a much better raw material that would probably minimize the potential of biosecurity issue in case of, let's say, animal protein or plasma protein. So they want to make sure that they will not bring in contamination in using animal protein or animal byproducts into their production. So they are considering more and more of these soy-derived alternatives.
Okay. Is there something else that you would like to tell our audience that specifically to remember when it comes to using the soy-derived proteins?
To summarize, not all are soy protein concentrate, okay? There are many types of soy-derived products that you can choose. And remember to choose the one that can provide you with a consistent quality, meaning consistent level of anti-nutritional factor at a minimum that is also indicated in their label. It should be guaranteed in the product. And number 3, take advantage of it, especially when you have difficulty in sourcing more expensive animal proteins in your marketplace. So in short, Isa, we are here to hopefully help our customers. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining me today, Dr. Ferriol.
Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. To get the latest about the animal protein industry in Asia and listen to our previous podcast, please visit www.asian-agribase.com. We invite you to join us again in our future podcasts.